Good afternoon, good morning, buongiorno, buon pomeriggio. Welcome back again to our book presentation. It's our third day of presenting books and talking about it. Today we have two special presentation about big names in the silent era, and we are particularly happy to be presenting in here. So the first book we're going to talk about is The Rise and Fall of Max Linder, by Lisa Steinhaven, which will be accompanying us today. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, good, thank you. And also Catherine Cormon, who also created a filmography for the book.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So we are particularly excited to have this book because we will be screening a long-lost movie of Max Linder, his last, which also has there's a lot of things to be saying about it, but maybe you will be better to be describing why also is important for many ways. And we also, we have a special connection as Giornate with Max Linder. It's not only in our posters this year, but it was the first retrospective. How the Giornate actually started was with Max Linder. And there was so many reasons to be talking about him, and particularly about this new book where there is a lot of information and a lot of, special new things that we need to know, but we want to know. And moreover, about the films, which are still finding and still be restored, because it was literally the first big movie star or star in the movie era. So, Lisa and Catherine, I don't know if you want to start introducing the book and the concept, how is it structured?
I can start. I really wanted to write this book because I felt there was a huge time gap in really strong studies of Max and his life and work. I'm talking literally from the 1970s or so, and that's not counting Maud's two books, Maud being Max's daughter, of course. But those were in French, and those of us in the States and Britain really didn't have as much access to reading those if you didn't read French, of course. So I also wanted to try to tackle many of the myths that came over about Max's life and work that just seemed to keep going on and on with no particular answer one way or the other about them. Things such as, did he serve in World War I, and how did he serve? Was he wounded? You know, what was the result of all of that on his career? You know, was he, was he a sort of an insane person who was mean to everyone and, could never get any work done? There's just so many myths about Max in regards to his work and life that I wanted to try to tackle. I mean, it's just something I like to do. And so was really my motivation for starting the book in itself. And I think if Catherine wants to chime in here, she has a lifelong motivation in trying to find his works, because there, is rumored to be anywhere from 300 to 350, right, Catherine? And I don't know how many you've found so far.
Well, the count was at 207 at the time of publication of the book, but there's one added in the meantime. So we're still hoping for more. And I think there'll be a few more, but probably not 100. I don't think we'll reach 300, but 220 possibly. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to say exactly that the book, there is a lot of content in the book. That's why it's also particularly interested. And as Lisa was explaining, there is a lot of things that were not clear or resolved, which, at least to shine a light on it, will make us understand better the complexity of this figure, which is very known as we know in silent studies, but in general. Although sometimes there was so many rumors that it might be in his time or right after his time, either overthrown, I must say, by that. And of course, the influence of other bigger stars coming from the US, with which he had connection, but also they were admiring him a lot. Of course, Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, there is many to be added to this list. Is something that kind of making, I wouldn't say forgot, but for sure we forgot the idea, the level of stardom that he reached. But I don't know, Lisa, if you want to start from the beginning and just the first passus devoted of the childhood or the early years of Max, and how he evolved from theater to cinema and his connection on that.
Well, he was born into a wine-making family in Bordeaux, the Bordeaux region, one which was originally not very wealthy, but they came to his parents came to the United States for a bit, and that particular trip garnered them a lot of money for some reason. There's not really any details as to why, but when they came back, they were wealthy from that point on, and it had to do with the phylloxera virus or fungus or whatever it was that attacked vines that they were able to overcome. And so at that point, they were able to really finance their children to do whatever they wanted. And of course, I think Max was one of the only ones who wanted to do something besides winemaking, and decided to, go to first a local school, and was interested in drama and the arts there, and finally went on to Bordeaux into a conservatoire there to learn. I'm sorry, my voice is going already. The dramatic arts there, and did very, very well. It was from that point that he went to Paris to try his hand, and really was not the most successful stage actor. I'm not sure why. I mean, he tried to get into this particular group of actors and kept failing time after time. The leader of that group even calling him a ham. So I guess he wasn't the greatest actor on stage. I'm not sure. But it was around this point when film started. And, there are all kinds of stories about who he started with. Was it Charles Pathé? Was it Théophile Pathé? Who was it? But anyway, he got his start. He made very little money, and he was in just about any film he could get in. So this is where we're finding him now, I think. Isn't that right, Catherine? In films in small parts, where you can just barely recognize him, as the Jewish jeweler, or as Punchinella, or whatever, these very strange parts. He's certainly not the dandy French rentier that he will be later, so that's where he still is a mystery.
Before you, Catherine, you add something to this. It is very interesting, exactly this part, because it is Stardom. It was really iconic in the sense it's fairly easy to recognize him, to spot him in a movie in his time, because it really creates such an image, which is also kind of in the cover too, which is very clear of the kind of character, not only the character he was playing, but also how his face, his pose. There is, of course, a beautiful known drawing of him that was used in many movies as well, which is quintessential of him, of the character he created and he built, and that evolution from looking to the other photos in the books where we see him when he's younger, it really make a contrast and make it very interesting as well. But please, Catherine, if you want to add something.
Yeah, that's actually one of the very fascinating things with Max Linder, is that his career bridges a lot of changes in the cinema industry. When he starts, it's still the cinema of attraction. It's small films shown by fairground owners. And the production is really quick. They were making a film a day or in a week. And there was a sort of probably a group of actors, and they would be cast in any role. So on one day, somebody could be the star, the main character in the film, and the next day they had a bit part. So it's very sort of theatrical way of functioning. And then at the moment when characters began to emerge, there was, for example, Rigadin, who was very, very famous, very popular, very much loved. Max evolved his own character of the dandy, the partying dandy. And so you can see the appearance of these series of these character films with series. And then that lasted up to World War one, and then after the war, the cinema had changed, and there were feature films started before the war, but after the war, they were only feature films, and he followed also that trend of producing feature films. So it's really very, very interesting to follow the changes in industry through the changes in the films.
Yeah, absolutely. That change, I think he understand it, although it definitely took some time to adapt, or try to adapt, and we will see in our in the movie on Friday night more about that. But also, yeah, the connection with Hollywood is particularly strong, and it was, again, with many stars, more than just the studios or production. And not only because it's a source of inspiration, but there was a lot of connection. I'm thinking of there's some photos again in the book about, for example, him fencing, and we know the connection with Douglas Fairbanks is immediate in that sense. So it was definitely also the use of his body, absolutely, and all this comedy. There is a disruption of what was used for all the other comics before, all the comic materials that we're used to. And yet he create, as Catherine was saying, like this character, which is the extreme version of a dandy, and yet lovable, even if extremely messy, which makes me particularly appealing to the public. It was so recognized. So what was the what was that you find of the connection with the US, with Max, and in his work, and not only?
How was he received over here, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, well, originally I think he was, because he did predate Chaplin, so I'm sure he was quite popular over here up until the time of the Keystone Studios and some of the other more popular comedic groups. But I think after that, he was a little bit usurped by them, especially, you know, Chaplin and the other comedy actors over here, mainly because he was, and this is a problem he had when he came here to film also, was that he was not grasping the American way of acting comedy or presenting comedy as much. He was doing too much, well, the Keystone comedians were too originally, too much grimacing, too much gesturing, things like that was not appealing to the American public at the time. He grew out of that, and by the time that he came here the second time, he wasn't doing that anymore. But there were a lot of critics that were mentioning those problems with his films when he was with SNA in the teens, the first time he came over. So I think that had become a problem for him over here.
And there is a part in the book that is also, there's many that are interesting, but I found very interesting is the story how was received in Russia. So his Russian experience was particularly extreme in many sense. I don't know if you can tell us a little bit about it.
He was extremely popular in Russia. In fact, I'm wearing a brooch right now. It was created by a Russian artist that I just got recently. It's still going on. The Russians adore him for some reason. I can't really understand it, but he was, he did a tour over there. And I kind of wanted to mention these tours because I think they're overlooked and they're extremely important for why he became so popular, is because on the tours, he combined film and stage acting. And I don't know what we even call them. I called them, cinema, I forget what I called them, but Catherine has a name for them.
In French, they call them film raccordé.
Film raccordé. And so he would arrive late to the cinema, arrive late to the theater, and they would show him on film running through the streets of whatever city it was, trying to get there, and then he would plop from the ceiling or something onto the stage, having arrived, right? And he's gonna, then act out a few things, and then they would show pieces of a film he was trying to, advertise or whatever.
Mhm.
And so that's what he was doing in Russia as well. He would do a different sort of film in each performance, or maybe he would do the same film. And he would take along actors, a whole troupe of actors or singers or dancers, and they would all help along with that. I think that combination of film and personal appearance was extremely important for his popularity. And the Russians adored him. I really, I don't know if it was the whole boulevardier look that he had at the time. I'm not sure, not really sure, but it's still kind of going on.
It could be the connection with France, or for the strong connection usually with Russia and Paris.
Yeah,
so very dominant. But it was not only that, as you were mentioning. It's very important that that you mentioned that. I completely agree. The performances, this big cinema raconté, there were something completely different. Who combined definitely his theater experience that usually was used and for the purpose and the serve only of cinema. Instead, he keep on creating this allure on one sense, this incredible, specific, iconic character, but connected to his public in many sense, to be in person and in cinema. At the same time, creating a live show in many parts of the world was something that definitely give us both how committed he was to the vision he had, and on the same side, what was the response of the public? Because of course, if it wouldn't be, and not much, it wouldn't be, and his career was so long that he could absolutely have skipped that part or just forgot as many as did, and instead he wasn't very committed on that.
And
yes,
and it also emphasizes the relationship between theater, musical, and cinema, which was really strong in the beginning. And it tends to be a bit overlooked in film history studies. We tend to see film as arriving point, as a sort of invention and out of context. And if you place cinema back into the context of musical and theater, it makes a continuum, and that makes it a lot more interesting. And he was definitely placed into that continuum. He was working on theater and cinema at the same time, at least in the first years.
That's right.
Yeah, and the quantity of production also, Catherine, that you found is also synonymous of that. It's not only popularity, but it was, the public wanted to watch his movie more and more and more all over again. In fact, there was, there's a lot also of copies that are in 9.5, which means a totally complete version. And it's for sure one of the first star, probably the first star to enter in the house of many viewers, which also, again, make his popularity different. And as we were talking, for example, yesterday about the ephemeras in cinema, there is for sure plenty of materials of him. And again, as it was iconic. So Lisa, as you were saying, things change after the war or from the beginning of the war. How is that?
Well, first of all, the film industry in France is completely obliterated, almost completely obliterated. And frankly, there's no supplies anyway to support any kind of film industry. So if you wanted to make film, you had to go someplace else. And at this particular time, Max was looking to stay as popular as he was, if not advance. But he also knew about Charlie Chaplin and respected him greatly. I think it was almost a sort of a test for himself if he could actually reach the same level of popularity as Chaplin and overtake him. It was a friendly sort of a challenge for himself. I don't think Chaplin ever knew about it, frankly. But he did manage to get a contract with SNA Studios, which is based in Chicago, Illinois, and went over. He was supposed to make, I think, 12 films. He ended up making 3. But that was because, his World War I experience wasn't as dire as he made out in the press, but it was still dire. He had these old problems with, he had his appendix taken out, and it was just sewn together like, a Frankenstein kind of a thing, and bothered him for the rest of his life. He had tetchy lungs that were exacerbated by sleeping on the ground at certain times during the war. So he was a very sick man. So
yeah, that's very recurrent in the book, that he's describing how he's having a lot of health problem, but still want to make as much movie as he can and as much as possible.
Right, exactly. So he does go to the States.
Yeah, we can see with the previous photo also, they almost, when there was Chaplin and Max Linder combined, they almost look one the positive or the negative of the other, which is a very striking pose. Which you can definitely see the connection, but it is very interesting in that sense. And one could be the opposite and coming, of course, more from Europe to US and that kind of things. And again, since he was, of course, before Chaplin, it was very clear, not only, as Catherine was saying, of the vaudeville, of how cinema started and how it was a combination of many things, but also what kind of public was looking and was trying to find too. And then the war come, as you were saying, Lisa, and things change so much, and that starts a lot of rumors also on him, and which, as you were saying in the beginning, that's something you want to try to clear out what could be the truth.
Well, the truth is that he was given a position driving officers around, which was a very light sort of a no combat sort of a job, and they could only keep him doing that for so long too because of his health. So I included a great story by a friend of his that is a personal experience with Max driving this person around one night. That it's very hard to pick and choose what is actually going to be a true story or not, but I felt this one was as close as possible. And it's really quite funny. Max driving some officer around at night. He's not supposed to have his headlights on. He's got his headlights on. He doesn't know any of the codes he's supposed to say or the passwords, but they all know it's Max Linder and they just pass him on through, those sorts of things. It's a nice story. So he did not see any battle or did not go to the front, but it still took a toll on him.
Yeah, you were also mentioned in the book that he used both his Max Linder name, but also his real name, Gabriel Lenville, if I'm not mistaken. So he was really, really committed in the war,
right?
Not only as for showing off or to be supporting the troop, which of course he was, because as you were mentioning, he was not really active, but he was really convinced that there was a cause in a sense. And as you were saying, he paid a toll on him. And since we have a little bit more time left, what would it be your point of view on his last movie, the one we will be screening on Friday? And the connection of this, of course.
I think everybody will love it. It was a very difficult shoot, as far as I understand. It was shot in Vienna. And Max had this incredible fear of anything German-like his entire adult life. So he spent the whole time there in utter fear of everyone and everything, pretty much, which exacerbated the fact that his mental state was already in decline at that point. But nobody's going to see that. It's a nice, it's a very much a sort of a template story for Max, wouldn't you say, Catherine? Where the rich boy sort of rebels against his wealthy family and finds the love of his life, which is a circus girl. And everything kind of happens from there. It's very well done. There's a lot of great gags in it. I think everybody will enjoy it immensely. But it was really a tough shoot for all involved, and lost one director along the way. And I'm pretty sure that many other people would have liked to have dumped it, but did not. So
yeah, and on that, Catherine, is also, we see it because this restoration particularly will be from 11 different film materials, meaning this movie was absolutely not successful. It was very hard to be finding copies. But in general, you did such an amazing job in collecting all the information and also the actual copies of movies that still exist. I don't know if you want to add a little bit more on this.
It's a work of art from Lobster Films. Serge Bombert, he did this restoration. The film was visible, but it was a restoration made in the 90s from really second-grade material. It was really, the quality was really terrible. So Serge painstakingly found every little piece that he could find and compare qualities and contents and put together this restoration. It's really a work of love because it's 11 sources. It's just a whole lot of stuff. So I wish I could be there to see it because I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yes. So as one last thing, just to be closing our nice conversation, as we were saying, we are very obliged to Max Linder in many sense. And as Catherine, as you were saying, you think we will not find, we will find still some movies, but who knows how many and how much is left. What do you think most likely will never appear, or we will get lost, we will lost forever of Max Linder, movie-wise?
But what's lost is in the early period, from 1905 to 1907, thereabouts. After that, he was famous enough. So whatever he appeared in was documented and has been, is known. Some of the films of the later period are lost in the sense that we don't have a copy of it at the present moment. We know the films exist, but have existed, but we don't have a copy of it. So my hope is that we're going to find somewhere a copy of those films which are not known to be kept. So, and maybe there's, for example, since he was so popular in Russia, there's a possibility that the Gosfilmofonds has some in their vaults, because there's no way an archive knows everything they have in their vaults. So there's a chance that we're going to find something somewhere one day.
There's 3 Russian films that we don't know about. I mean, you know, we've seen,
the Russian productions, the films that he made in Russia for the Russian public.
That would be fascinating by himself, but all the first years, it would be incredible just to, let's hope one day to make a big retrospective just of that. I'm sure it will change our perspective.
Oh, we could make a whole festival of Max Linder.
Yes,
if you want.
That is also true. 1 year we will do the Max Linder Giornata, and that's it. Everybody will be happy. So Lisa and Catherine, thank you so much to be with us.
Thank you.
Here is the book again, and also physically. We are always happy to show, and we will wait for you for next year here at the Giornata for more Max Linder.
We'll be there. Thank you.
Be there. Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, so now we would like to move to our next presentation, which we are also very happy to be introducing. It's ABEL GANCE and CHARLES PATHÉ Correspondance from 1918 to 1955. It was curated by Élodie Tamayo, which is, she will be with us. She's with us today. Hi, Élodie. How are you doing? Hi. Thank you for joining us. So the book is in French, and we decided to present it, even as we usually prefer books in Italian and in English. But first of all, yes, let's go something easy. If there is ABEL GANCE and CHARLES PATHÉ on the cover, it's hard to say no. And secondly, there are letters, and even if for those who who can read even a little bit of French, it is good enough, and it's so much interesting to have it. So first of all, Élodie, how did the project start, and how did the publication and more? I know it's a bigger project for you as well.
Yeah. The project started, it was the initiative of the Fondation Pathè in Paris, which keep the Pathè archives, and more particularly from Stéphanie Salmon, which is, she directs the historical collection of the film. And I went there as a PhD student to read this correspondence between Charles Pathé and ABEL GANCE, and it was striking as how much patrimonial value this correspondence had. And we started to dream a bit about publishing those letters. And then the project went bigger because we thought it could be more interesting not only to publish those letters conserved, kept in La Fondation Pathé, but also to collect all the letters which were in different archives in Paris, but also in Toulouse. And so we, I made this adventure to collect all those letters from those 4 archives.
That is, yes, that's why we were particularly interested, as I said, because it's not only a view, a personal view, because there is a lot of passion in the letters, with ABEL GANCE particularly, but not only, in both two figures that could be looked as one, the artistic one, the other more the industrial one, which is true, but the combination of the two, it's also a lot of the result. We can see it in ABEL GANCE works. But this long correspondence will tell us a lot about how this kind of connection, it was not only a business related, but more deeply to something different. I don't know if you have some example of this or more deep relation that they have.
Yeah, well, it's true that when you read those letters, the complexity and the ambiguity of those two figures is really striking. For example, we see Charles Pathé as a pragmatic capitalistic guy, but when you read the letters he sent to ABEL GANCE, you see a passionate man, and he also has something quite idealistic with GANCE. A lot of faith in him in a way. And for example, one thing is striking is that he accepted in 1918 to speak with GANCE every week, just to speak about the future of film medium, just to let imagine, to anticipate what will be the future of cinema. You don't expect Charles Pathé to do something like that.
Absolutely.
And at the contrary, ABEL GANCE is a representative of film art, of avant-garde, but he wanted to make a commercial success also, and he's driven by money. It's true. He wants to have
there's a lot of exchange about that, a specific note on how money should be used for how much materials, and for what use to be filmed, how it's exactly as you were saying, it is definitely not expected from both sides. There's many that are completely unexpected. Meaning also, though, that it is very interesting what you were saying. They decided to speak about cinema, and I'm sure, as this letter will give us an idea, and a very good idea of what relation was, there was a lot. It's not just a letter of business interchange or general interchange. There is very specific money, how much film materials, how many meters, and so on, but also dedication and as you were mentioning, passion in specific project and in the cinema in general, which is very striking, I would say. Would you think that the tone also, I mean, of course, I can barely read some French, but I understand And of course, especially in the first letters that are a little bit more older, the tone that we use, the kind of French, it is very interesting. Also coming from ABEL GANCE, as you were mentioning, that it was a very creative but avant-gardist creating in that sense.
Yes, and there is a lot of different variety of letters in this book. There is pragmatic letters with pragmatic style, with a lot of numbers, with short sentences, and there is also letters which are more literate and more poetic, and this is interesting too, because ABEL GANCE wanted to be a filmmaker and an author, as a writer, a writer of cinema, of movie. And in those letters, he experimented that how to be a poet in the production of a film, and so he writes letter quoting Nietzsche to Charles Pathé, for example. Mm-hmm. He tried that to put poetry even in those commercial deals he was engaging.
Yeah, that's really clear. Again, well, I will not ask you to translate, but here is a great example of that. That kind of sense of fully being not only a filmmaker, but feeling a complete artist in all the possible way. And it's very clear in his movie. And it's not only what the movies are about, as we all know, it was how they were conceptualized. There is a many concept and images that are then moving transposed to the moving images, but yet you can feel such a big, powerful character as he became. And yet he's talking to Charles Pathé, which is as well as big and important and omnious cinema, almost quintessentially, because they were making everything cinema related could be possible: camera, film materials, movies, movie theater, everything. So they clearly, both the Pathé family clear and the brothers clear understand and move and create something that, of course, go way beyond France, as well as ABEL GANCE was creating something in his point of view, in his moment, completely new and original and different in that sense. So the kind of contraposition is very interesting. Now, do you feel like how much, if any, comes from the letter, how much of technical innovation for which GANCE is for sure way known, not only for his movies, of course, but so many creative different things. And you think, well, I wouldn't say inspired by Pathé, but at least discuss or consider, or how much you think he was curious to know what Pathé was doing, as Pathé was always keep on inventing as well, in that sense.
Yeah. He was GANCE was very, very attentive to what Pathé advices. He listened carefully to his technical advices. For example, the rhythm at the shooting. He experimenting for the first time different rhythm for the shooting, as Pathé asked him to do so, and also he benefited from technical materials imported from the United States by Charles Pathé, and this is crucial to ABEL GANCE's career, and also to the career of his main operator, Léonce Henri Burel. And those two, thanks to those techniques, as for example the sunlight, the projectors, the sunlight, they could be pioneers in the field of electrical lighting. And this is crucial for Abel Gance at this time, because he really wanted to be like Prométhée, you know, the myth Prométhée. He wanted to catch the fire, and
Yes.
he wanted to catch the electrical fire.
Prometheus, yes.
Yeah, Prometheus, yes, yeah. And he could be this Prometheus thanks to Charles Pathé apparatus. Yeah.
Yeah, that is again something that yeah, I wouldn't say overlooked, but the connection is definitely such a unique relationship. But still, we sometimes generally do not consider or overlook how technical aspect influence the filmmaking in general. All the filmmaking is connected to, and just simply consider, of course, color, the kind of colors, the kind of cameras and lights, and of course, emulsion and so on, did shape the filmmaking. In this case, though, we have a direct source of that, which is really, really, as you were mentioning now, this example is perfect because we could not consider Abel Gance for his creativity, broad creativity, and yet this doesn't come from nothing. Come from France in a specific time where not only there was the possibility, but there was such a big enterprises. They were doing this, and so. And this is particularly should be more, I would say, investigated as well and related. And of course, for example, the connection of Abel Gance with music is more known in that sense, although yet still a lot to be said. And of course, we all remember the Polyvision of Napoleon, but all that is just part of a longer process of looking and be looking for. So not just we are avant-garde, we do art and not these terrible things, which is money won't bring us, technical things.
Yeah, and it's true when you read the letters, also you realize how much mistakes, how much experiments, how much unachieved project there is behind this huge innovation, such as the triple écran, the Polyvision. There is so many tentatives that didn't make it, and this is also the interesting part of the book, to let us know more about films that are well known, but also films that are less known, and films that don't exist, or inventions that don't exist. But it is interesting to it broadens, it make a larger spectrum of the imaginary of the period, and also about the knowledge that they had. And this is another point, yes, that interested me a lot when I was reading this book.
Yeah, about that, I was about to ask you as well, because we all consider Abel Gance in the silent era, and while Pathé keep on being Charles Pathé, and Pathé still exists in so many ways. And Abel Gance, of course, got more rougher times, still being prominent, still being known, but yet it was definitely, especially after Napoleon, very hard for him to be doing filmmaking and filmmaking as one. Is there any reflection of that in the letters?
Yes, the letters reflect that by the chronology of the writings. You see, the letters are very numerous in the first part of the last part of the 1910s and of the Roaring 20s. And then with the coming of the sound, it's a long break which separate Gance and Pathé, and the letters are less voluminous. They are I lost my word, but the exchange is more melancholic at this point.
Yeah.
Seldom.
The tone is different.
Yeah, the tone is different. The intensity of the letters is different, and what is moving is that Abel Gance still tries to be to be kind of protected by Charles Pathé. Even at this period, Charles Pathé is retired. He has no more power really on the French cinema industry. But he's like a magical talisman to Abel Gance, which has lost his superb. But he tried really as a kind of magic to recover this nostalgic power that he had and that he lost.
Yeah, because we also have to consider that Gance come after a big and during a big moment in the French cinema, which was not only French cinema, it was at that point world cinema in that sense. Can you tell us how many of others? I will say it is hard to be saying colleagues of Abel Gance because he himself also was thinking as one of a kind. But whoever is mentioned, moreover, who was working with Pathé, I'm thinking like of Zeka or Segundo de Chaman. I mean, big personality was also deeply involved in technical aspect as creators or in general other director in that sense that were with Pathé.
You mean if Gance had a relationship with those other directors?
Yeah, he was asking Pathé about them or some of them in particular.
Well, he was in touch with Nalpas, which was the director of the Film d'Art.
Yes.
And he was Nalpas was his producer before the alliance between Charles Pathé and Abel Gance. And there is one unachieved film of Abel Gance, which is very curious because at this point we are in 1918. This film is called Ecce Homo, and it is the first and the only try of Gance making an independent film. For this film, he created a company, Les Films Abel Gance. This adventure didn't went well. He just abandoned the film, just like that.
Yeah, so some rushes. And
this film was to be made in Nice. When Nalpas was shooting La Sultane de l'Amour. So at this point, it is a same circle of filmmaker between Louis Nalpas, Charles Pathé, Abel Gance, and they were trying to transform Nice and La Riviera in a French Hollywood. You know, soon after there will be the studio of the Victorine. And so there were at this point, yes, there was an emulation between Charles Pathé and those two producers, filmmakers. And then it was more a rivalry with other filmmakers, such as André Antoine, because André Antoine also was a protégé of Charles Pathé, but the two of them clash. and André Antoine liked the work of Gance, but he was very critical about his talent as a screenwriter. And this was painful for Abel Gance because he wanted to be an excellent screenwriter. It was his goal, his main goal. So there was there was a lot of rivalry between those three men during the Great War period.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting, all the things you're mentioning. Also the fact that, yes, Gance basically give up on his only independent. And again, we were mentioning an artist, an avant-gardist, but still wanted to have production money to build his idea because he had a clear view of what kind of cinema he's thinking and what is inside. He's inside an industry after all. and as you were mentioning, they were trying to build, like, creating an Hollywood in Nice. Yet Gance movies are they're not the opposite. They're another way of looking and making movies. So that is particularly interesting. But also the fact that, yes, there was my point was there was a bigger complex system around that. We can not only cherry picking, ABEL GANCE, but we should consider what other movies were making at that time, how they were making, how it was thinking to make it differently. For sure, there was a lot. Is there any other project that they are discussing again that didn't happen or failed to happen, even in the sound era, of course?
Even
in the sound era.
Even in the sound era. There is a lot of projects which are discussed. One of them was shoot, but it's La Fin du Monde, the first sound film of ABEL GANCE. But in those letters, you can see that it was a very old project that Gance wanted to shoot in the early 1910s. So when he did shoot this film, this project was 20 years old at this point. And there is a lot of other projects which are discussed. For example, ABEL GANCE wanted to adapt some novels of Rudyard Kipling, and he went to London to make a deal with Kipling. It was the only author he wanted to make an adaptation for cinema. He also was longing to shoot Don Quixote, another about Don Quixote. And there were a lot of other projects, and the main one, the last one, is called Divine Tragedy. Divine Tragedia. It's it was produced. It enters in production from 1947 to 1952, and it was a crazy project, I shall say, an apocalyptic project, which was to happen after a Third World War, a nuclear war. And this nuclear war was integrated to a biblical story with the Turin Shroud, which and on the Turin Shroud there was no more a fixed image, but a movie, a magical movie of the Passion of the Christ. And this film was to be produced by Georges de la Grande, who was a Catholic, who produced Monsieur Vincent. And so they tried to produce this film mostly with the money of Catholic private subscriptors. The project failed to achieve because they didn't raise enough funds for this colorful super production that Gance wanted to make.
Did they shoot something after all, or they were not even got to the shooting point?
They didn't shoot anything. They made some technical tests. They had a casting, and they made photographies of the cast. They also meet the Pope to have patronage. They raised a lot of money indeed. And Charles Pathé was one of the patrons, a mécène for the film. And at this point, my work on the letters make a kind of turn, because I realized that ABEL GANCE was making false letters from Charles Pathé. That he made, he arranged all the letters, changes the dates, changes even the content of the letters, and when Charles Pathé was too old and too sick to write, he invented himself as a new Charles Pathé.
Oh, wow.
He impersonates the
Wow.
the producer.
So take place of trying to gasp again the help of him by reproducing him.
Yeah, it's like a spirit thing.
Wow, that's shocking. Although,
Yeah.
yes, like, definitely, we can all see that in a way. So just to be getting more close to the end, Élodie, you, I didn't mention at the beginning, but it's also important to say that, well, of course, everybody can buy your book online, but there is a foreword by Kevin Brownlow, who's particularly, as always, very interesting. So I don't know if you want to comment a little bit about it.
Oh well, it's difficult to comment on Kennedy Brownlow, but it's such a joy. I mean, he's one of the only living historian that knew ABEL GANCE today, and his work to reconstruct Napoleon is so crucial, and so his vision on Gans and all the memories he has about this filmmaker is not only moving but so exciting. It's an epic drama to read.
Oh, yeah. In many sense. And he also said that he could not have met Charles Pathé, but yet, thanks to him, he started getting very attached to cinema in the 9.5.
Yes, so it's true. This is the 9.5 version of Napoleon is his start really in the patrimonial field.
Absolutely. As we were saying before with Max Linder, the fact that 9.5 changed way of cinema, as we were also discussing on the first day, the way we think of cinema as public show. There was also private show. In that sense, Pathé got it very straight. In fact, they created multiple format there, particularly only of Pathé, just for that, and halfways, meaning there was so much original innovation. Of course, Pathé was also taking things, as you were mentioning, from the US, but not only. There was this challenge. It was, and Gantz for sure got it very clear. There was a challenge not only in how you were writing movies, shooting movies with director or actor, but definitely, again, technical was something fundamental and very known. Thank you, Élodie. I think we got to the end. I don't know if you have a last comment or something you would like to add.
No, thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you, and thank you very much. As I said, your book is in French, but it's absolutely a delight to be reading. If some of our viewers can read in French, but moreover, it's such an important, as we were mentioning yesterday about the ephemera, how also this kind of work, which I know is also part, correct me if I'm wrong, of your PhD, but also having this, working on this kind of materials, it is fundamental for any preservation or restoration. It's a broader view that is much needed in that sense.
Yes, and it's true that, to conclude, this book is not only about ABEL GANCE and Charles Pathé. There are numerous characters in those letters, characters of the shadows, and so for that also, behind those two names, there are so many people which are crucial to the cinema history. It's true.
Wow, that was great. And as we said, we saw a brief part of it. The beautiful things of the book as well is that it really got us the feeling of a letter. It's not just the transcription, but it's also the layout and so, which is, I found it particularly lovely. So thank you very much, Élodie, to be with us today. And we hope to see you in Pordenone soon, maybe next year.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for following us today. Tomorrow we will have other books or other special things to be presenting, and we hope you will keep on following us the next day on our YouTube channel or Facebook, or of course my movies, and watching either from remote or later on being here in Pordenone. So thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.